What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. In this video, I've got another very important AMC update to bring all of you this afternoon. So what we're going to be covering in this update is a brief analysis of the Ortex data going into next week. We've mentioned this a couple of times, but I want to make sure that it's clear to everybody where we are at the current time with this data and what it means for us going forward. Now, in addition to this, we're also going to take a brief look at the option chain going into next week. Everybody likes to talk about gamma squeezes a lot, and when that opportunity presents itself, I always try to make sure you guys understand the implications and the price levels that we would need to see in order to have that extra buying volume from market makers. So we are going to be taking a look at that as well. And we have some really important new data that has been recently released about the magnitude of the margin debt outstanding at the current time. Now, when you combine this with the amount of volatility that we've seen in the market over the last week, and with what we are expecting to see coming up going into this next week, it is entirely possible that we are going to see not only a lot of volatility, but additional margin calls as well. Now, something that I want to make very clear to you guys before we go forward, you are never going to see a news article or something come out about margin calls. You can see it in the price action, and you do have to do some deductive reasoning to figure out, well, if the price has done this and we know everybody's over leveraged on this stock, is it possible that a margin call has happened? Yes or no? That is what you have to do, but you are never going to see any type of news article come out that is going to tell you that a margin call has happened. But with what we are looking at on AMC, and we take a look back at this box that we saw right before the massive end of May to June run-up, it does look similar to what we are seeing right now in terms of the price action, this little rip up, come down and consolidate. So we're going to have to see and wait and see what happens, but I do think that we really have a lot of bullish territory ahead. So before we get into all of that information, if you enjoyed the information and analysis that I provide for you in this video, make sure you go down and hit that like button. It costs you nothing to do it, but it really helps us out a whole lot in getting this information out to as many people who want to learn. And the more people that we have staying up to date on accurate AMC information, the stronger our community becomes. And if you guys want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So when we come over to this Ortex data right here, again, utilization 88%, current estimated short interest as a percentage of the free float, 20.15%. That is very close to the all-time highs that we have seen on the short interest in the past. And when you combine that with the fact that we have seen an increase in the exchange reported short interest last week, it is very possible that we see all of these numbers at the top, the short interest that we are seeing estimated right here, and especially this utilization number go up, which I think is going to give a lot of people even more conviction in their investment. And again, when we see this utilization go up close to that 100% range, it leads the way to those forced share recalls, those forced buy-ins that we most likely saw back in June. Now, when we come over to Ortex or Stanco Tracker right here, we can see that when we come down a little bit further, that going into this next week, there's not a lot of action on the option chain for calls that are in the money, but we do see a decent amount of calls that are out of the money. Now, a lot of people do like to gamble on weeklies, and it is not my job to really come out and say, do this with your money or not do this with your money. I just want everybody to be careful, but most likely what we are going to see is this out of the money call number increase as people start to speculate on another price movement to the upside for AMC. Now, if we do see that, and that is it coincides with a price increase, we could see a little bit more buying volume pushed into the stock due to those market makers needing to hedge. But again, this week is not setting up too great for one of those gamma squeezes. But again, a gamma squeeze is very, very different than a short squeeze, because a gamma squeeze results from the market makers hedging the options that they've sold, and the short squeeze results in the shorts buying back the shares that they have sold into the market. Now, let's get into this margin call situation. So we've brought up this chart a lot in the past. Now, the last time we got this data was for July, and what we saw was the margin debt as reflected here in the red line. We can basically see that it's an inverted chart. It makes it a little bit more confusing, but it is easier to see because when we come up here, it's hard to see the different movements. And when we come down here, we can see that when you look at the margin debt with what happened in July, it looked like there was a lot of deleveraging happen. There was a lot of fears of what was going to happen going into the end of Q3 and the beginning of Q4. But what we are seeing now is a significant increase in the outstanding margin debt. Now, what does this mean? Well, it means that all of these institutions are even more over leveraged than they ever were before. And when you combine that with the volatility that we have been seeing in the overall markets, we don't necessarily know if this is going to be short margin or long margin. But again, what it does tell us is that the over leveraging in the markets is at an all-time high. So any price movement that we are going to see in individual stocks and the overall market is going to be felt a lot more by these institutions, and it's going to be a lot easier for them to get these margin calls, and they're going to have to come up with that capital in order to maintain their positions and meet those maintenance margin requirements. Now, let's get into why this week coming up is so important for our broad markets and why we could see a lot of this volatility continue and how that is going to potentially affect AMC. So when we come over to this article, Pelosi plays chicken with House Progressives schedules 3 votes next week that must pass. Next week is either going to be a massive victory for congressional Democrats or a deflating defeat, which will send the Hill into chaos. On Saturday, Pelosi warned in a Dear Colleague letter to members of the Democratic caucus that they'll have 1 week to pass a continuing resolution, Build Back Better Act, and the BIF, Bipartisan Infrastructure Framework, adding that September 30th is a date fraught with meaning due to the expiring programs that the Senate-passed BIF will provide fresh funding for, as well as the date that government funding will run out at midnight. So here's what we're looking at this week. The market is going to be reacting a lot to different news headlines that are going to come out. We could see days where we are trending in a very bullish direction. Something could come out, a news article from any of these votes, and we could get sent crashing back down. Now, that's just with the broad market. But again, with what we've seen on AMC over the last 2 weeks, it's most likely going to follow what the market is going to do. I know there's been a lot of conversations about this negative beta. And if you guys have watched any of my videos over the last couple of weeks where we've talked about this concept, negative beta is not going to be the end-all be-all in terms of price movements that AMC is going to participate in versus what the overall market is doing. It's just a correlation in what the stock has done over a past 1 year or 5 year period, but that doesn't mean that it is going to happen in the future. Now, this is one of the things that I want to talk about, risking a United States default. Yes, if they aren't able to kick the can on this debt ceiling problem to 2022, the United States does risk a default or getting their credit rating downgraded. So when we're thinking about that, yeah, that would have a very significant adverse effect on the market, but this has happened many, many times in the past. So this new bill, basically the stopgap measure to provide funding to our government and kick this debt ceiling can down the road, has happened before. We know that these situations come up and it usually gets resolved, and it's usually a bargaining chip for either political party to score political points. So basically what I'm thinking is going to happen, they're going to end up kicking the can down the road, even though a lot of people are thinking right now that even though an event has not happened in the past, doesn't mean that it can't happen in the future. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens. But again, most likely, either way, we are going to see a lot of volatility this week. Now, if basically everything ends up okay after this week, and then about 30 days from now, we see this Evergrande situation get resolved, it basically provides us with clear skies ahead with not only the market, but AMC as well. Now, we've gone over those two scenarios in the past where the market continues going up, AMC can continue doing what it's doing, eventually stair-stepping its way back up to the levels where we could see that next significant run-up, or the market collapse situation where we see AMC have a significant sell-off, the shorts add to their position, and then the algos switch to buy and close out those positions. In my opinion, the market continuing on this bullish trajectory is really going to be the best option in the terms of the morale for the ape community. A lot of people would really freak out if we saw this significant decrease if the overall market were to sell off. And even if that were to result in a very significant price movement to the upside a little bit later down the road, I think a lot of people would be very, very worried. And I don't think that would be the best thing for the community at the current time. But again, the market does not care about your feelings. It is going to do what it is going to do. And I want everybody to be fully prepared with what we have going forward. So that is mainly going to wrap up this update on AMC. If you enjoyed this information and analysis that I provided for you in this video, make sure you go down and hit that like button. It costs you nothing to do it, but it really helps us out a whole lot in getting this information out to as many people who want to learn. And if you guys want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so you're notified every time I post a new video, so you get to stay up to date on all of your favorite stocks, learn about a couple of new ones, and see exactly which options I'm trading and which strategies I am using to trade them. So I hope you guys are having a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.